my name is Molly Green, and I am a high school teacher in Southern California. And today I wanted to talk to you about teenage suicide, the risk factors, and what we can do when we suspect a family member, a student, or a friend might be contemplating suicide. Most of us know what suicide is. The Center for Disease Control, however, defines it as death caused by self-directed injurious behavior with an intent to die as a result of the behavior. In general, most of us, we define it as taking your own life or killing yourself. As a teacher, I deal with adolescents on a daily basis, and adolescents have a higher rate of suicide than many other groups in society today. During our teenage years, we experience teen angst, physical changes, new social roles, and some teens may experience aggression, depression, and divergent thinking. These are all normal parts of growing up and becoming an adult during this transitional time. So as the adults in the young person's life, we can find it difficult to differentiate between what is normal and what is teenage turmoil that could end up being life-threatening. But first, I want to talk about a slight misconception about teenage suicide. Talk about it. There is no study that shows that talking about teenage suicide with teenagers causes them to start thinking about suicide or commit suicide. In fact, when we talk about depression and suicide, it gives the young people a chance to talk about their feelings and their problems. And it often helps them unburden themselves and release a great deal of their stress and worry. It's important that we, as the adults, we identify several characteristics or risk factors that leave a young person more susceptible to suicide and suicidal thoughts. Depression, loneliness, hopelessness, anger, Latinas, and GLBTQ. We'll be talking about those. Depression is one of the main contributors to suicidal behavior. Studies show that more than 14% of teens have experienced at least one major depressive episode in their young lifetimes. And out of those kids, half of them have reported considering suicide. Along with depression, when people feel hopeless, it can leave them with a pessimistic and negative life view and a view of their future, which may lead them to self-destructive behavior like suicide. Additionally, when people feel overly angry or lonely, they may be at risk for suicide. When young people do not experience the nurturing bonds of friendship and family, it will leave them socially isolated. People who act out aggressively towards others, or people who are victims of violence, or people who grow up around hostility are also at an increased risk of suicidal behavior. Within the teen demographic, there are a couple groups that show increased danger for suicide, and that includes Latina females and the GLBTQ population. Latinas are twice as likely as their white peers to consider suicide. Some of this is thought to be based on the family dynamic and the difficulty of adapting to a new culture, coming from an immigrant family. Similarly, GLBTQ youth are at least 3 times more likely to attempt suicide than their straight classmates. And 30% of all suicides, of all youth suicides, are GLBTQ kids. GLBTQ students face repeated bullying and fear in society, where they're not sure if they're going to be accepted, and quite often they're not. And then they're often shunned by their own families. So, what can we, as adults in a young person's life, what can we do about this issue? Well, we have to be proactive. We need to listen. We need to pay attention. They're going to give us cues. We have to be there to hear them and see them. So some warning signs are negative talk. When you hear someone say, "I wish I were dead," or "I won't be around much longer," or "I'm tired of living," I don't see how I can go on. I should just kill myself. Whether it's in real life, face-to-face, or in a text, or on Facebook, social media, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. This is a person who is giving you warning signs. Someone, they're reaching out. They're looking for someone to care and show an interest in their pain and their frustration. We need to pay attention to behavioral changes in our children. We need to take note of mood swings. When someone suddenly becomes apathetic about an activity they previously enjoyed greatly. When a young person has extreme changes in their sleeping patterns or their eating habits. Truancy issues. When they're not going to school, there's generally a reason. Alcohol or drug use is a red flag. And then also, so is giving away prized possessions. When they give away their personal possessions, that is a big red flag. When we see or hear these types of behaviors, we should immediately refer that young person, in the school setting, to the school counselor or psychologist. And similarly with your family, you need to talk to a mental health professional, get that child in to see someone, and that person will then do an interview or an intervention to find out what's going on with the kid. And when a young person is seriously contemplating suicide, the trained mental health professional, it's very important techniques that they use. Key is always to listen and show respect. It's important to acknowledge that the young person is seeking help and is there for help. When the health professional talks to the student or the young person about suicide, they need to be direct and specific. And they may need to send the student for hospitalization if they are a danger to themselves. And then it's key that the young person receives counseling and psychotherapy to reduce the risk of these suicidal behaviors or thoughts in the future. Sorry. One other tactic that mental health professionals do try is what's called a no suicide contract. And it's not a binding agreement, but the young person, they sign a contract promising that they will not end their life. And then on the contract, when they start to have some thoughts and negative feelings and that, they have people that they call to help walk them through it. And they also promise in the contract that if they feel an immediate suicidal tendency, they will call 911 at once. Suicide happens behind closed doors, alone. When we open that door and we start a dialogue, we're giving the person permission to talk about their problems, and we may be decreasing their risk of suicide. Again, talking about suicide does not make young people more likely to try it. Besides talking about it, what can we do? Well, one thing that has been shown to be beneficial is getting people involved in social activities, like doing volunteer work where they're making a difference for something else or someone else. Additionally, peer counseling or peer support programs help to offset loneliness, which is a strong characteristic of suicide attempts. Every school should have a crisis response team. It is their job to provide intervention to stop suicides as well as educate and respond if an attempt occurs. The school should talk about these issues. If, unfortunately, a suicide does occur, there are things the school should do and should not do. One of them being they should talk about the suicide, but not in an assembly, not have a giant memorial to the student, because that could give young people the idea that suicide is an acceptable form of death. But they need to provide the counseling and allow the students to grieve, and also watch those students, all the students, but specifically the ones who are friends with the deceased, to make sure that they're able to grieve appropriately and properly. As parents and teachers, we are the front line in the fight against teen suicide. And there are many resources available to us to help our students and children who may be struggling. We have the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-TALK. There are several resources for GLBTQ youth, including the Trevor Project, which they have a 24/7 crisis intervention and suicide prevention lifeline for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning young people from ages 13 to 24 at 1-866-4U-TREVOR. There's also the GLBT National Help Center that has a hotline and a youth talk line with the numbers here on this paper. There's also the It Gets Better project that was started by a gay man who wanted the young people to know that it might be bad right now when you're in middle school or high school or, when you're young, but it will get better. You will grow up and you can thrive. And then we also have the Bully Project. Bullying is a huge issue in our schools today, exceptionally difficult because of the way it's changed for these children versus traditional school bullying with the internet and social media. And so we have thebullyproject.org where students and adults can find ways to get involved and to help be proactive against bullying in our schools and for our children. And there's also Stand for the Silent, which is an organization that also works against bullying in memory of children who have killed themselves because of the bullying that they have faced. So we have several resources that our young people can turn to, but the most important thing that you can do for a young person is to honestly listen to them and show them that you care about their thoughts and their feelings. Thank you.